Hello everyone, this is Gabriel Koulikov, and this video is about anarcho-capitalism and why is it that I recently converted to anarcho-capitalism? Why have I changed my political philosophy from that of sort of modified limited government to stateless society? Why have I changed? So, this video is a follow-up to the last video I did, which one of my friends recorded, and this will be a video response to that. So you can click on what this is a video response to right under this video. And you'll see the first video. I'm going to be using the same terminology that I used in that video. So I'm not going to define it here. You can go to the last video if you would like to catch up. Watch that video before you watch this video. I'll also put the link in the description, and I'll also put a summary of what I'm saying right here. So why did I become anarcho-capitalist? Okay, so the first reason is probably one of the key things to understand is that I saw my own equivocation between the government and the state. And in an anarcho-capitalist framework, well, at least some of them, since apparently different sources say different things, but under the framework I'm using, the one I'm suggesting, the government and the state are two different things. And the state, I already defined it in the last video. Government, it's what we're governed by, laws, etc. And I thought that you needed the state in order to have government. And once it was shown to me that the state wasn't necessary, especially given what the definition of what the state is, then I saw, wow, I had never thought of that. And I thought about it and I said, that makes a lot of sense. And it makes a lot of sense that, in fact, the state actually upsets the natural government that develops between human beings interacting amongst each other, which is all government is. It's the interaction of human beings amongst each other, and then coming up with certain guidelines for justice within that set of interactions. And the state not only, because of its inherent violence, the inherent violence within the state, it creates injustice itself and thus becomes a criminal that government needs to protect against, but it also is less efficient and effective at governing, and it also upsets the natural governance that develops between human beings to make it worse. And so for all those reasons are the reasons to oppose the state. If you're pro-government, okay, if you believe in social justice and taking action to enact social justice, that is not just about you, but for everyone. If you're pro-government, like if you believe in the entire Bible, you must be anti-state because the state interferes with the government that naturally develops, as well as making it more difficult for activists to achieve social justice ends, as well as making it more difficult for dialogue as to what actually is socially just versus not. And that rational dialogue, it also disrupts that from happening. So that's point number one. Point number two, which I alluded to just a moment ago, I saw the violence against my fellow human beings inherent in supporting the state, including through actions as seemingly benign as paying taxes. Okay, so what happens is because the state is an extortion racket that has a coercive monopoly on the seen as legitimate use of force, paying taxes to the state is giving into that extortion racket. Paying taxes to the state is funding its continued extortion of your neighbors. And if you have compassion for your neighbors, you will not support the state. And if you seek social justice, you will not support the state. In addition to that, you're able to keep more of the money that you do have in order to actually use to fund social justices or however otherwise you see fit, as well as an added incentive to actually work to produce value for your fellow neighbors, so that way you may have more money, more capital with which to enact social justice yourself, thereby making activism even more effective. Third reason why I converted was I saw that anarcho-capitalism took the reasoning for limited government to its natural conclusion. So people who believe in limited government, if you actually take the reasoning to the natural conclusion, it leads to anarcho-capitalism, because if you see the state only for defense, for courts, and for police, then for national defense, whatever, military. So military, courts, and police as the only function to secure life, liberty, and property, then the question is, would that be secured better through competition where there are incentives to actually producing that result, as well as accountability if you're not producing that result, or having a coercive monopoly instead of competition? And that is what you end up having to argue for. If you're for limited government, you end up having to argue for this coercive monopoly as being somehow better at doing the job than the same situation but with competition. So it ends up actually being very anti-limited government to support the state as previously defined. And as I said before, it's even anti-government, period, to support the state. And so those lines of reasoning convinced me to become an anarcho-capitalist. And reason number 4 is it was proven to my satisfaction that under anarchy, it would not inevitably relapse into a society full of states. There would not inevitably be monopolies on the legitimate use of force, because states by definition are involuntary, whereas anarcho-capitalism is completely voluntary. You voluntarily pay for your courts, your defense, etc. You voluntarily pay for the private roads that you drive on. You voluntarily pay for everything, because the free market is based on voluntary transactions. And if people are engaging in involuntary behavior, then the courts systems that's most effective, the police systems that are most effective, security forces, and the militaries that are most effective are going to get your funding. And that they give you a bill, and you have to pay the bill. Okay, if you don't pay the bill, then you don't get the service. Or if it's connected to a particular geographical region, then they excommunicate you from that region, and anyone who has anything to do with you at that point then becomes a target for those militaries, those court systems, etc. With already included incentives for them not to overstep their bounds, because then people are not going to support them if they're too harsh, as well as they're not going to support them as much if they're too lax. So you'll strike the right balance. There'll be the least amount of injustice. Okay, unlike the state, where the state can get away with all kinds of injustice, all kinds of inefficiency, and yet you still have to pay taxes to them. And the influence of elections is actually very minor, but that, I'm sure, is a topic for another video. It's mainly the threat of revolution. As long as at the end of the day you're still paying your taxes, then the coercive monopoly extortion racket has won. So that's all for this video.